Please.
So I'm going to talk briefly about, my mother's experience as an immigrant, and I want to touch here on something that Malcolm Hill said, this power of education and telling people how refugees fit into the wider context of economic development. Here's why I'm very skeptical about that. Because when my mother arrived in the UK and her parents arrived in the UK, people still called them dirty packies. When she had graduated from Oxford University, she was still a brown person who was not seen as a citizen. Right? Extent can we really sell this idea that being educated or fitting X, Y, and Z criteria is what you need to do as a refugee for people to humanize you. The inherent problem with these people is that they don't humanize you. You can't fulfill your oppressor's criteria so that they see you as human. So how do you humanize people?
Dehumanizing refugees, thank you very much. And with this, let me go to you, Dr.
Okay, I just got to stop the tape there right now and basically say that the moderator went straight to Douglas Murray. We're going to get to his answer. But before we get to his answer, folks, I want to go over the question that this lady posed, because that question is so important. Again, instead of basically giving credit to the West, allowing her mother back in that point in time to be able to go to Oxford and graduate with a degree from Oxford. And it looks like this young woman herself has graduated from a very top university herself, to have the privilege of being able to live in Britain in the West. But then to say, oh, they called us some names, they called my mother some names, boo-hoo, cry the freaking liberal tears, right? I want to go back. It's so important to hear the victim mentality, even though she has so much privilege, over 99.99% of the world, because she was fortunate enough to go to England, that her parents went there for her to be able to speak like she's speaking and do the things that she's doing. Listen to the victim mentality that this woman has in her question. Let's go to that tape. Let's just go. I'm going to rewind it a little bit and let's hear it once again, and then we'll continue with Douglas's answer.
So I'm going to talk briefly about, my mother's experience as an immigrant, and I want to touch here on something that Malcolm Hill said, this power of education and telling people how refugees fit into the wider context of economic development. Here's why I'm very skeptical about that. Because when my mother arrived in the UK and her parents arrived in the UK, people still called them dirty packies.
There's the first volley right there. They called my mother dirty. Who the hell gives a crap? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Why does everybody give a shit, give a crap about what people call them? Who gives a crap? If people listen less to the people around them, listen more to themselves, it would be an unbelievable amount of self-help for everybody. But this lady right now is calling victimhood mentality, blaming it on the West, when she herself was born and raised in the UK, probably went to some of the best institutions, best schools, best colleges, probably graduated with a great degree, had the privilege of being able to be, probably wouldn't have been able to achieve this as a woman as much, probably in Pakistan. I doubt that very much. Or her mother could have gone to a college as prestigious as Oxford back in Pakistan. This is the stuff that pisses me off, pisses a lot of people off. That you take the benefits of what you've been given and then you basically crap all over it by asking these type of questions with victimhood mentality. It's absolutely BS. She can ask her question, but this victim mentality, this is the problem. She's not a victim. By no way means is she a victim. Look at her. What type of a victim is she? She's had every single privilege, and her parents back in the day. Oh, so what, they were called a few names. So what? Everybody gets called some names. The Irish were called names. The Italians were called names. The Polish were called names. Every immigrant class that came from someplace was called names. Things happened, but they went beyond it, above and beyond all of that. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Let's continue and hear some more of her stuff, and then we'll hear Douglas's answer, because obviously the moderator wants to go ahead, and put words in Douglas's mouth. Let's hear the rest of this question again.
She had graduated from Oxford University. She was still a brown person who was not seen as a citizen, right?
Not seen as a freaking citizen. She graduated from Oxford University. How the hell did she get in? Are you going to say affirmative action? Is that what we're going to say? That maybe she didn't really qualify, but because she was brown and she was a packy, as you were saying, that's why she got into Oxford, so she shouldn't have got in? Do you want to go that route? Is that the lane you want to take this?
Right. So to what extent can we really sell this idea that being educated or fitting X, Y, and Z criteria is what you need to do as a refugee for people to humanize you? The inherent problem with these people is that they...
Ooh! The inherent problem with these people. What people are you talking about, lady? The white Europeans? These people? That you have to fit into certain criteria? Why do you have to try to fit into certain criteria? Why don't you just go about doing the things that you want to do? Quietly. Instead of trying to impose your culture, your stuff, or whatever, your culture, onto somebody. You better do what we're doing because we came to your country, and now guess what? You got to do what we're doing, and what you were doing's got to stop. That's where people get upset. Nobody gives a crap if somebody comes over from another country, does whatever they want to do in their own home and around. You can have your culture, your food. It's a melting pot. That's what happens in the United States. That's what makes the United States of America so different. Because you don't have cities around there, or a lot of cities, like you do in Europe, that are just immigrant-based. All the immigrants go there from that country. And that's where the majority of them are. No, they don't try to integrate into society. That's where their kids are having a problem. Because kids want to be British. They want to be American. They want to be, Swedish or Norwegian or Spanish or French or Italian. But their parents and their grandparents, they don't want that. So you've got a clash of cultures. And the cultures should meld. Keep some of what you have, absorb some of what's available to you inside there. The stuff that you like, fine. If you don't like something, you don't have to do it. But the problem that she's talking about is that the people that in the European countries, in the Western countries, in the Western democracies, what they don't like is the fact when you have people that have come as refugees and others, and then they try to, after a while, they try to impose their, whatever it is, culture, religion, you name it, whatever that they do, they want to impose that in the newly, place that they're in, the new state that they're in, the new country that they're in, the new city that they're in, and impose those values onto the people that have been living there for centuries. That's the problem, folks. That's the problem. Anyways, let's get back to the answer by Douglas Murray.
Don't humanize you. You can't fulfill your oppressors' criteria so that they see you as human. So how do you humanize people?
Dehumanizing refugees, thank you very much. And with this, let me go to you, Douglas Murray, because much of your argument, Douglas, seems to be about the us versus them, the fact that, we have our own values, our own Britishness, our own virtues, and they will come to our shores with their values, their traditions. You seem to almost suggest that they come to your countries with a lesser breed of values.
No, I don't think I said that at any point, and that's another time you've tried to put something in my mouth.
So when you talk about the difference in values, what do you suggest?
Look, first of all, I didn't say that. I said that there are challenges because we do know that there are challenges, and let's just be frank about this. I mean, for instance, I've been in the Gulf for the last week or so. I see more burqas in my home city of London than I have seen in the Gulf in recent days, certainly here in Doha. Now, I can't say I'm delighted by the sight of more and more burqas in London. Do I feel any hatred of the people who wear them? Of course not. Of course not. But I can't say I'm elated by it. And definitely there are times I think, what percentage of burqas in this area becomes like not that pleasant for everyone else.
But again, is it all down to burqas? Because again, you're not asking people with other traditions whether they care about the sight of people drinking alcohol or showing up in bikinis. Again, it's a very
we could in Britain.
Western-centric viewpoint.
I'm not. I have to say, you're going to bark up the wrong tree if you think you're going to persuade a Brit that we should stop drinking alcohol because of people arriving in our country. I mean, that's not going to happen. These things are all a bit of give and take.
You bring your own traditions that don't quite fit with theirs.
Well,
they don't.
See, now this moderator, what she's talking about is she's saying, oh, you know what? So people that are coming from another country to your country, and those people, refugees, asylum seekers, immigrants, whatever you want to call them, when they come to the country that they want to settle in, they start to say, oh, we don't like the things that you're doing. You better stop because we don't like those. And now they want to impose, as we were saying, their values, their culture onto the culture and values that are already prevalent, that have been there for centuries, that have made that the nation that it is, that has made Italy what it is, that has made Spain what it is, Britain what it is, America what it is. I mean, all the Western democracies, what they are. And most of the Western democracies are a melting pot of something from the beginning, and they've been adding on as more and more people have traveled to there and settled there. But this lady is basically saying, you know what? So if the immigrants or the refugees don't like something, well, you know what? That should be perfectly fine because they don't like it, so you should get rid of it. Well, no, that's just not the way it works, lady. That's what Douglas is trying to say. You're not going to get people to stop drinking just because people from some countries think that shouldn't be allowed. And as far as the burqa thing that Doug is talking about, listen, that's just fine. Okay, so yeah, guess like he said, that's true. There are more burqas in London than there are in Doha. So is that religious? Is that culture? If it was religious, everybody should be doing it, right? But it's just culture. Some women want to, some women don't. Some are forced to do it. Some want to put it on by themselves. Okay, so what? But it shouldn't be imposed on anybody. And it shouldn't be restricted either, except for certain case security and those kind of things. And we can talk about that later. Anyways, let's continue.
Yeah, there are, as I said, and before we got all confrontational, which you did from the get-go, I said what the problem is.
There goes Doug. This lady was confrontational right from the very beginning, interrupting all kinds of things.
Here is that these things are all rubbing against each other. And in that situation, you have to work out what things you're willing to give up, which things you're willing to compromise on, and which ones you're not. You're not going to persuade the Brits to massively change their culture. But let me just make the point. Every single society has certain aspects of it it doesn't want to give up. This one will. In Qatar, this one will. Everyone does. So please don't try to make this a kind of bigoted European,
but I think that
would be a very, very dishonest way to. That would be a very dishonest way to represent
Just answer this question
debate.
directly if you can. Which of your values are you most afraid to lose? Which ones are most threatened by
freedom
the
of
arrival
speech.
of refugees?
Absolutely, freedom of speech. Absolutely.
Oh, you think that's not a problem?
I mean,
you think that's not a problem? But
you think? Sorry,
no. Let me pick up on that. Let me pick up on that. It's very easy to snigger. It's very easy to snigger about this until you've had friends shot in a newspaper office. It's very easy to laugh about that until it's happened to people you know.
Right, but could you see how the very same discourse of anxiety or discomfort around seeing hijab could lead to the very same outcomes as yours for free speech of the press? In other words, the same discourse that says, well, you know, of course I respect your religion, but I'm uneasy when I see it performed in public in a certain way. That leads to violence. That leads to
I don't think that does lead to it. But I'm
really?
Let's look at the solutions here if you have one for us.
I think we have to think about values, freedom of speech, absolutely. Why are we supporting, I agree with you, Putin and others are a problem as well. But we also, as a British citizen and somebody who's a resident in the United States and a taxpayer in both countries, I am frustrated by the fact that we are enabling the war in Yemen, and we have made billions and billions of dollars in weapons sales to those. So those values, if we believe in human rights, that counters those values. On the burqa question, as much as I also, especially as somebody who in Britain, as our colleague over there, despite being there 40 years, I would still be told things like, your English is good. That happens occasionally sometimes, which is an indication of you're not quite one of us type of thing.
I don't really think that's a question that you're not one type of us. People are just, if a Chinese person came in there and spoke really good English, we'd say, your English is good. Wow, that's great. I mean, how'd that happen? Because I certainly wouldn't be able to speak Chinese as well as you're speaking English. And when I travel and I go back to Pakistan or India, people say, oh, wow, you know what? Your Urdu's all right. I mean, it's not that great, but they know right away that I'm not from there, that I was born in America. They know that right away. They can tell if somebody says that thing. I don't really care one way or the other. It doesn't bother me. I don't go straight to the victim thing and say, oh, it's racist question.
And I am Muslim by birth, so by definition, I'm probably British Muslim as well. I don't like to see the burqa and the niqab either. But by the same token, I look at it and I think, well, does it really bother me? What does it do to me? I don't like people covered in tattoos either. I don't like a man in a skimpy Speedo on the beach either. That doesn't appeal to my
but it does
sense of aesthetic either.
It does disrupt the social cohesion that Douglas is talking about.
There's an element of like, we may not like it, but actually freedom of expression and liberal democracy does mean that we have to think about, as long as their human rights doesn't butt up against mine or yours. I think that is the issue. That if they start telling you or they start telling me, then there becomes a problem.
Masood, how do you look at this discussion? I know you don't like to be sort of dragged into anything too political, but how do you look at it?
Okay, so basically it is so interesting to hear different views, but I would like to add a very important point that when I...
Now, if I were to say right now, this young lady here, okay, she's wearing the headpiece. Nothing wrong with that. I don't mind. She wants to wear it perfectly fine. Her English, her accent is absolutely adorable. I love that accent. I mean, it's just, and somebody said, oh, you're racist, you're pointing that. No, is she going to be able to, she's from Iran, I believe, or she escaped from there. I don't think that if I were able to speak Iranian, my accent would be so bad, and it wouldn't even sound a tenth of how beautiful her English is. I mean, yes, she's got a different accent, but her English is absolutely spot on. She may have some difficulty with some words and maybe in the translation or whatever, but I'm just mesmerized by her voice when she's speaking in her story. So, you know what? If I said that, if she thought that I was being racist, that's not my fault. That's her fault for inferring that. Now, of course, if somebody comes out and says something, we all know what that would be if you were saying something completely racist. But we're not talking about that. Anyways, let's continue with her.
I go to a different country, that doesn't mean I will impose my culture or my belief on those people. Everyone has different things. Like I have my own faith, I have my own nationality, I have my own culture that, is part of my life. I cannot change it because I was grown in this way. So if I respect myself, if I respect my identity, I don't want to change it. But at the same time, I have to respect others. So like, for example, when I am in the UK, I saw different people with different styles, with different beliefs, with different opinions. This makes me, kind of interested in knowing more. Like if I will, in my class or in my seminars or lectures actually in the UK, if I will go to somebody and tell them, okay, you have to be a Muslim, for example. This is wrong. I believe in something that if you live in a society that has differences, you can learn so much and you can create and have so many advancements. Because if we all are similars, we cannot, have deeper insights. And I believe in something as well.
Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely is what this girl is saying. You go to another place that is different from your own. You don't go there and impose what you want onto those people that have been kind enough to accept you and take you in to become part of the fabric of their society. Yes, you've got your own culture, your own faith, your own mannerisms, your own food, whatever that is, and that's fine. No one's telling you to stop that. But what they do is that when you try to impose, when people that are coming that were not from that country or from that area or that whatever that space occupying is, borders, if you weren't from that country, they're welcoming you to there. But what they don't want is for those people to come over there and just basically say, you know what, now that we're here, your values are terrible. We're bringing our values, our culture, and we're going to impose those on you. That's what nobody wants. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host, Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. Let us know what you think. Follow the links above and below. I'll leave with my final thought, which is, when you're right, and when you're left,